Oh, it's the next new comic book day, so what comic am I going to talk about? Is it going to be Action Comics number 1000? Is it going to be Captain America 700? Nope, it's going to be Belle Beast Hunter number 3 from Zenescope. Um, I may still do a video about Action Comics 1000, it's just that so many other people have already done it. I kind of feel like I'm not contributing anything to that. Whereas at least with this one, I'm the only one covering this series, so that's my little niche. Because this series really kind of surprised me when issue 1 came out in January. It's this kind of silly idea. What if Beauty from Beauty and the Beast, instead of taming monsters with love, she killed monsters by being badass? It's a silly premise, but it worked much better than I thought it was going to. Belle it goes into detail about her upbringing, her training, why she does what she does, her backstory. It was an interesting introduction to her world. They've gone to pains to show that she's cool, she's badass, but she's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She's not some kind of, just generic hero person, but neither is she like a Mary Sue type. She actually has a personality. And so this one came out with, I think, a month's delay. And unfortunately, this one didn't work as well as the previous two issues have. The previous two issues are really a surprise. Unfortunately, this one was not as good. There's moments here, and you can see, like, right here, where the art just really isn't as good. And that's something that's kind of true throughout the entire book. And I kind of noticed that on bigger panels, like this one here, the art is better, but with smaller or close-up panels, it just looks really wonky. And unfortunately, that applies to the main character as much as anyone. So that was a big letdown right off the bat. Was that even though there's a month delay, the art still slipped in quality. Like I said, you've got some panels that look really good like this, and then you've got some where she just looks really weird, along with her mentor type person here. So the story, such as it is that Belle, our main character, is part of this legacy of monster hunters that tends to be on her mother's side. And she's just starting her career, and everything went to hell. Her sort of mentor slash father figure got killed by a monster, along with her entire base of operations. And just as she was about to drown, she was picked up out of the ocean by this person, who her name is Patricia Otts. Get it? It's like Mrs. Potts. It's P. Otts. You get it? You get it? I mean, I realize these are supposed to be silly, but that was a little bit much. And then so Mrs. Potts is showing her around this kind of like shield type helicarrier thing, only it's a giant blimp. And they have all of these like weird inventions and sci-fi weapons and, sort of spy type things. And then this monster thing attacks, this, tentacle monster lady thing attacks, and basically blows up the blimp. It's like we've seen her go from one status quo in issue 1, and then that got ripped up, and then she went to what seemed like another status quo in this issue, and then that got blown up. So she's been really unlucky so far. And we learned that there's some kind of cabal of people, evil people, whatever. They're not really shown much about them, but we're shown that they want to take down not only Belle, but this sort of entire monster hunting apparatus slash organization. And so the last page is these evil, shadowy people going to showing this creature here, which of course looks like the Beast from the movie Beauty and the Beast. And then we get some solicitations here, because they always end with that. But this issue is kind of a disappointment, but it sort of kicked off an interesting little journey, I guess, into learning more about the Grimm fairy tale. So I posted this picture on Twitter, the Move the Needle thing, where you post pictures of things that you buy, and then you at the creators of it to say, hey, look, I'm one of the people that's buying your thing. And posting this prompted a response from somebody with an anonymous Twitter account, but seems like that they're connected with Zenescope somehow, just the way that they worded it. And they were like, you should check out the Armed Forces special that kicked off this story. And so I ordered that, the Armed Forces special, from their website, because I was like, well, what does that mean exactly? That's where the story starts. So we see in the opening 5 or 6 pages of this that the person was being very, very literal with their tweets. The first issue of Belle, Beast Hunter, opened with Belle fighting this sort of, I don't know, minotaur-looking thing in a museum. And here we see the beginning of that story is her finding that minotaur-looking thing. And that's it. That's the story. So you don't really get much insight into the origins of any of it. And then the rest of this issue is just simply pin-ups of the different grim fairy tale characters in sort of, sexy military regala, which frankly is kind of dumb. I didn't know this when I bought it. I didn't know what this was. I guess they do stuff like this on a fairly regular basis. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get behind it, because for one thing, I don't know who half these people are, or even more than half these people. I don't know who most of these characters are. I don't know who any of these artists are. Also, the Navy gets really underrepresented here, which sort of annoyed me. It's like here you see Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz dressed up in kind of a Navy outfit, and there's another character later on who sort of does the same thing. America's an evil superpower, so you'd think it would get more love, but no, it's all stuff like this. However, one thing of note, the only real reason I'm showing this is because there is one of the artists that I did recognize, and that's right here, Jamal Igle, who is catering to the straight white male heterosexual gaze right here. I just thought that was kind of funny. And the fact that he, amongst all these people I haven't heard of, R.B. White, Alfredo Reyes, Michael Dooney, Tina Valentino, a whole bunch of, and a number of other names that I just don't know. Somebody that's obviously using Marilyn Monroe's face as a pinup. That amongst all these people is Jamal Igle. I just thought that was funny. Oh, by the way, this series, I've only read one issue of this series, the first issue, because for some reason it's really hard to find. I probably have to wait for the trade to get the full thing. The first issue was actually really good. It surprised me. Also, this trade paperback right here, Van Helsing versus the Werewolf by Chuck Dixon, this isn't bad either. So there's more recommendations. And I know Dark Philly loves this series, so that's something. So anyway, yeah, I ordered that. This was disappointing. And then, but I was like, I can't just order one single comic online, even if it's an oversized, overpriced comic. I gotta order something else that might have an actual story to it. Because even though I didn't know what this was, I kind of got the feeling it was going to be a little bit frivolous. So at the same time I ordered that, I ordered one of the old Grimm fairy tale books, and I figured I would get the one of Beauty and the Beast on the cover just because that's why I'm interested in this. So this is volume 3. It's from the Halcyon days of 2012, and this one was really eye-opening to me. Because it turns out that the name here, Grimm Fairy Tales, it's not false advertising. It literally is retelling some of the Grimm fairy tales with like a modern twist on them. So here we see Beauty and the Beast, and it basically, we're seeing this. The idea is that this woman here, who's Celia Mathers, she was sort of like the flagship character, the recognizable, marketable character for Zenescope for the longest time. I guess she's dead now, which, whatever. But she's Snow White, and I distinctly remember when I was, a teenager and I was going into the local comic shop seeing her in, that section, the sort of weird indie section with all the salacious stuff on the front of it. But I distinctly remember seeing her quite a bit. So the idea is that she has this book that has the fairy tales in it that you can basically, you can just read it like a normal book, but the book itself also has powers that we see later. So it's kind of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it's being told with this woman in the real world reading it, and she's basically applying the lessons of Beauty and the Beast to her real life, and it seems like the stories kind of changed to match the real world a little bit, because here, the twist, because normally you hear the idea of fairy tale with a twist, and it's something really stupid. It's something like, Shrek. Shrek is funny, but it's not something you really take seriously. Here, it's actually like an intelligent twist. It's basically, what if the beast didn't change? What if he didn't, recognize the error of his ways? What if he, instead of, learning to love Belle, what if he instead decapitates her cousin as her cousin is trying to rescue her? And then he goes on this rampage where he takes on her fiance, and then basically takes on this entire army to get to her, and ends up killing everyone and everything in his path. So it'd be kind of funny if like Jordan Peterson or somebody got a hold of this, because I know for him, Beauty and the Beast is his favorite fairy tale, maybe his favorite story ever, and he talks about it at some length. And it's like, well, what if given the chance to change, the prince in the story didn't change? I don't know if this is supposed to be the same beast that you see at the end of this comic, because for one thing, they actually give the prince a name in the trade paperback, and the name is Edmund, and here they call him Alex. So I guess it's not supposed to be exactly the same person, although there's obviously a lot of similarities between the two. But yeah, it's kind of fascinating that you've taken this idea of sort of an adult fairy tale, which fairy tales are already fairly adult by themselves. They may have been made for kids, but they can be really hardcore, even the ones that are just in the grim versions. They deal with murder and violence and sex and all sorts of really deep and troubling themes. And so this one kind of takes it even a little bit farther. So I was saying, if you watch my original Beast Belle Hunter video, I was saying that I kind of wish that it had tapped more into the sort of primal nature of fairy tales. And it turns out that Zenescope, when they used to do these things in their old days, because this is only volume 3 of their ongoing Grim Fairy Tales book, that's what it was. It was them retelling fairy tales with just even more sex, even more violence. And you can see that the art is really stylized. Most of the art from these current Zenescope books is fairly straightforward American superhero style, which is fine, but it's just kind of weird that all of their leading characters have been turned into sort of heroic adventure characters rather than these sort of weird, Neil Gaiman-esque. It's weird that they've gotten away from their roots this much. I don't know if this is them trying to basically, as they say, find a hole and fill it, that they realize that DC and Marvel have been slipping in what those things are supposed to do, which is deliver straightforward heroic action tales. So maybe Zenescope, realizing that there's a hole there that they could possibly fill, are trying to do it with series like this. That's entirely possible. But maybe there's something else going on. So yeah, this really surprised me, and it makes me kind of want to check out more of their older stuff, because there were people who were saying that I should read. When I did my first video about Zenescope, they were saying I should read their older stuff, and they weren't really specific about what I should read, and this random trade paperback that I only got because of the cover was really kind of eye-opening. Here you see Snow White doing this version of the Three Little Pigs, only here the pigs are the bad guys. They are reprobates that were planning on murdering people for money, and each of their houses are basically a representative of how guilty they are. The pig with the straw house is the most guilty. He's already killed people before. He has very little to stand on, and he's not at all apologetic about it. So he gets eaten by the wolf very quickly. Then the second guy is bad, but not quite as bad. So he has a house made out of wood. That doesn't hold up much against the wolf either. And then finally, there's the person that she actually came to try to save from himself. So he's still got a chance. That's why his house is made of brick. But as the story goes on, as he's talking to Snow White, he is given a chance to repent a bit, basically, and he doesn't. So he's still eaten by the wolf, even though he had this really solid chance to save himself. And so basically there's two, and it kind of comes full circle, because in the Beauty and the Beast story, Snow White was trying to show the woman that she gave the book to that her abusive boyfriend isn't going to change. And she's trying to give both of them a chance to save themselves, and instead what happens is the boyfriend ends up blowing himself to death. Here, she's trying to give the student the chance to change, and he ends up getting eaten. Here, in the next story, Little Miss Muffet, because I was noticing that that Snow White is acting like kind of a psychopath, and in this issue, people start to call her out for that. And you can see the art style changes dramatically from one story to the next. This is the Juniper Tree one, and this one, you can see the art is not nearly as good as the last couple of issues have been. I didn't know what the Juniper Tree was. I'd never heard of that fairy tale. Turns out it's one of the most hardcore fairy tales ever. It deals with murder and incest and cannibalism and violence and death, and it turns out that you really can't make that any more edgy than it already is. So if anything, this version of the story is actually tamer than the accepted version of the story that you usually get in fairy tales. But once again, it has a bad ending. It's supposed to end with everybody having learned from their mistakes, and instead it ends with the girl that Snow White was trying to save overdosing on drugs. And then it ends with this story showing her, it's kind of interesting, because it's like this journey sort of started with me getting the Armed Forces special, and then it ends with them talking about, the importance of service and the importance of heroic sacrifice and what that can do, not just for the people that are immediately sort of affected by it, because here you see this person that Snow White inspired with her story about the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, and here he jumps on a grenade and dies at the age of 19, but the people that he saves go on to save other people because they remembered his sacrifice, and then those people, some of them go on to save other people. So it kind of ends with in a way, it ends with a much better tribute to the armed forces than just sort of, gaudy pinups. So that's sort of my little journey about Zenescope and this series, Belle Beast Hunter. Even though I didn't like this issue as much, because like I said, I didn't like the art, and I didn't like that the story it's starting to become a little bit redundant. It's like this is almost exactly the same story as the first issue. The fact that we're seeing this guy show up at the end who may or may not be the same person as this guy right here, it doesn't make me want to give up on the series. It makes me think that the next issue actually could be really cool. But we'll see. So yeah, tell me what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. Or in any case, this is Unranked Chevron, signing off.